What's up, everybody? Welcome to Primarch Purpose. This is where I look at each Legion's Primarch situation individually in their own rambles, giving you my thoughts on what the ultimate endgame goal and purpose of these Primarchs are. The Emperor created the Primarchs over potentially a period of centuries, and to get the Primarchs to the stage of where they were whisked away. And you don't just do that without having a clear-cut goal and purpose and game scenario in mind. The Emperor is very far-thinking, so we never got to see this happen. Now, the intro overview ramble kind of goes over the full kind of criteria of how we're looking at this, but it's very what-if situated. So what I mean by that is we have to assume some things different from the standard 40k timeline. We're going to assume all legions remain loyal to the Emperor, and thus their Primarchs as well. Staying loyal to the Emperor, we're going to assume the Great Crusade comes to a successful close, and this means that the Imperial Truth wins out, so there's no ecclesiarchy, there's no Inquisition as we know it, and we still have threats, however, within. We still have insurrection possibility from a really large spanning empire. Those on the fringes are those kind of, not overlooked, but you could say with less attention on them, always could breed insurrectionist thoughts and breakaway concepts, and as well as the fact that not all of humanity is going to be 100% discovered with the Great Crusade's conclusion. There's going to be potential warp storm areas or potential areas cut off from real space or cut off from reaching that will be accessible to have human civilizations that are their own and won't bend their knee and submit, as well as those, like I said, on the fringes who will try to rebel. So you're going to have that problem. You're going to have still chaos as a threat, which could cause those problems, and you're still going to have, of course, Xenos. Tyranids will still invade, Necrons will still wake up, and so forth. So you still have enemies within and without to deal with. So it's not like the Great Crusade's over and everything is peace and harmony and there's nothing going on. So with that said, I go in a bit more detail in the intro overview section of things. But I'm going to be tackling the last Legion first because they're going in reverse order. And this means we're looking at Alpharius and Omegon. This is a very unique situation for Primarchs because while all the Primarchs are not, I'm not going to say they're all twins. That means two. There was 20 Primarchs. I don't know what the word is for 20, like twins or triplets or quadruplets. I don't know what it is for 20. But when you think about how the Primarchs were created, they were all whisked away basically in the same developmental process of being a Primarch. So they're all more or less in that twinning, if you will, situation. But this is a very unique situation in that each Legion had one Primarch except for the Alpha Legion, which had two. Now, with that said, the Emperor, I am sure, knew of the twin Primarch situation because the stage that they were in their pods would have been an advanced enough stage to know, almost like ultrasound style, if you have a twin or not. Within these artificial wombs. So I'm definitely confident the Emperor knew of this. And this actually works very well for the Alpha Legion concept, this Ghost Legion as it were, that was kind of described as being, when they were created as Astartes, the legions in their infancy did different things, and then they got bigger and bigger and bigger and became more autonomous than their own. The Alpha Legion was always kind of this non-existent Ghost Legion spy shenanigan, internal affairs, subterfuge style of thing, and that is very much inspired by their genes, which are from their Primarchs, in this case, plural Primarch, Alpharius and Omegon. So first thing to understand is, for doing this Primarch purpose, I don't know if I made it clear enough, it doesn't mean that the legions aren't going to do anything but this purpose, right? Just put it in perspective, in standard 40k, Grey Knights are very much anti-chaos, anti-demons. But if they got to fight through a Tau battalion to get somewhere, they're going to do that, right? They're not just going to only fight demons. So the Primarchs may have a particular purpose that they were created for specifically, but as we see in the Great Crusade, they can launch wars and lead soldiers and lead their Astartes and do politicking if necessary and bureaucracy stuff and do things outside of the spectrum of what their specialty might actually be, or their purpose might actually be. So that is very much still true. So while the Alpha Legion and their Primarch may have a particular purpose in mind, if they have to launch ye old-fashioned warfare, if you want to think about it that way, they still can. It's not like they're not only, or it's not like they're only going to do their purpose and nothing else. They can still launch crusades and campaigns if necessary, as per the will of the emperor, who is, remember, in this what-if style situation, a still living, breathing, walking, talking emperor. So, with that said, Alpharius Omegon would still be a closely guarded secret. I don't think really most any of the Primarchs knew of Omegon as Omegon. Maybe Horus did. And maybe he still didn't really fully understand it. The Emperor definitely knew. And I think even fewer knew Omegon as a title. And if they did think of it, they probably would have thought of it as Alpharius' full name. So it's a very kind of punny play on words situation. Alpha Legion being the last Legion. You have Alpharius, the last Primarch, and his twin Omegon, Alpha and Omega, with their flagship, the Beta. So a lot of play on words going on here. So what would the purpose of having twin Primarchs be? Well, firstly, they kind of suffer from the ninja paradox, if you want to think about it that way. And what I mean by that is, in the ninja paradox, one ninja in movies and games and shows and whatnot, very deadly, right? Very much lives up to that ninja mythos to face and combat, and is going to be a huge problem. However, once you start throwing multiple ninjas into the plot, they become super weak almost. Not, I shouldn't say super weak, but like two ninjas, much more able to be dealt with than 1, 3, and so on. Just makes it that much more kind of watered down. And Alpharius and Omegon kind of suffer from that because one Primarch, a tremendous beast of power. However, these twins, still Primarchs, still beasts of power in their own right, are their stature in terms of their mythos and the way they're portrayed is somewhat diminished compared to the singular Primarchs of the other legions, especially considering they blend in very well with their Astartes and they encourage free thinking, free thought, independent action, and you have this whole I am Alpharius meme where every Alpha Legionnaire introduces himself as Alpharius, basically, and nobody really knows. The common person could be completely tricked by it, and others are wary of it. So it just diminishes their stature a little bit, which is purpose by design. So I can't really chalk it up as a fault. It works for what the Alpha Legion do, and it works for Alpharius Omegon very well. And I think the purpose we see in mind for them is internal affairs style stuff. If you wanted to compare it to the Inquisition of 40k, almost Hereticus style of being. They would be rooting out corruption and rooting out problems from within, trying to stamp it out before it can begin. Now, Alpharius and Omegon would be the paragons of this and would be leading the charge as this Imperial Truth styled Inquisition happens, right? So we would have an Inquisition, for lack of a better term, still in this what-if scenario. It would just be headed by legions and their Primarchs. And in this case, for internal affairs, Hereticus style, we would have Alpha Legion as top dog here, with Alpharius and Omegon able to organize their legion, their splinter cells, their insurgent groups, their spy networks, their information gathering capabilities to the nth degree. And I think what we see is their ability to root out insurrectionist thoughts and capabilities and activities, because we see them what they do. That was a terrible sentence, but what I mean is we see how they operate their legion and their strengths. Omegon leads the stealth corps. He can just waltz on through proximity detectors and the like, both because of his skill and his armor and his capability. So we have the ability for real subterfuge and spying and information gathering, and because of the real autonomous personal effect they put on their legion, where even down to the squad sergeant level can think independently of their captains, and their captains can think independently of their chapter masters, if you will, and so forth down the line. Well, yes, Alpharius and Omegon have ultimate reign on this. It really lends itself well to being able to have just a single squad of 5 Alpha Legionnaires just stuck in somewhere as counterinsurgency operations, raising the local militia to do things, training them, teaching them saboteur style to fight against this insurrection or to do counter-insurrection capability. It's the multi-spectra combat style, multi-spectra warfare that the Alpha Legion are known for, hitting you sideways, coming at you where you're weak, blitzing into your strengths, only to fade away again. It's different from something like a Raven Guard or a White Scar style of warfare. It's not the death from a thousand cuts, hit and run necessarily style purely, because Alpha Legion have their sieging capability down pretty strong as well. They can do smear campaigns and take over your Vox networks and just do propaganda and anti-propaganda. So these things can lead to destabilizing a population or destabilizing a coup. And I think this is where we see the strengths of the Alpha Legion through their Primarchs leading that whole charge. Because one thing the Alpha Legion does, which is definitely a byproduct of Alpharius and Omegon, is it's not just Alpha Legionnaires. They give a little Hydra scale, as they call it, kind of symbol pendant thing to their insurgents, their spy network, their standard mere mortals who kind of are the eyes and ears and in some cases actions of the Alpha Legion beyond the Alpha Legion's grasp. So you have a very big, entrenched, in-depth network, spiderweb style of information that Alpharius and Omegon can call up at whim and make use of, and pass along while necessary, to other branches, if you will, and make use of and act upon as well in their internal affairs hereticus style. So that's where I think the Alpha Legion's Primarch's purpose would be, is leading that whole charge. And being twins, it allows them to have their cake and eat it too. We're looking at the capability of Alpharius being in a very public eye, pomp and circumstance, bureaucracy BS, right? Where he has to be there at councils or be very open and kind of bogged down in that regard. And then you have Omegon, another Primarch, doing Primarch level stuff, if you will, and really being effective in their charge, able to infiltrate deep and be gone for months and ends by himself, looking like a gene bulk servitor, potentially, masquerading in that role, to get into somewhere, to get something vital and disrupt something or whatever. Or you can have vice versa, Omegon masquerading as Alpharius, as he does. There are spoiler alerts here, so I'll give that to you now, but as he does after Alpharius gets killed by Rogel Dorn, he senses it, he feels it, he gets withdrawn, then he masquerades as Alpharius. Well, he can do that regardless if Alpharius is dead or not, right? So he could pretend to be Alpharius, and Alpharius can go off and do something where he may feel he needs to be there present personally himself. And then because of their capability to kind of blend in, as long as you don't need to be sheer physical presence, or they can keep the helmet on or whatever, you can have an Alpha Legionnaire being Alpharius, as they tend to introduce themselves as well, and have two legions doing two things on different spectrums of the warfare, really collapsing an enemy commander's capability to fight. When the enemy thinks the Primarch is somewhere else and is really there, and when you have two to really mess with you that they don't know about, they only know about the one, it leads to being really effective in a multi-spectrum counterinsurgency style, which is what I really feel the Alpha Legion is adept at, being that kind of ghost legion doing things in the background with two heads of the Hydra being present and being Primarchs. So that's what I think about for the Alpharius Omegon situation. A definite boon, a definite strength to have it, even though they might not be the most overt beacons of demigod strength as other Primarchs may be. It's that very purpose, or the very capability that they're not that way, at least, that lets them have their real strength in internal affairs situations. So that's my thoughts for the Alpharius Omegon Primarch twins. And yes, this is assuming that little bit of fluff about the Emperor and Malcolm Sigilate trying to maybe get rid of certain Primarchs and legions is just not being talked about here. I bring that up because invariably that's something somebody could say, well, what do you think about this? And that's going to get its own video, but I don't think, and for the rest of this, for these legions, we're not going to look at it that way. But that's Alpharius Omegon. A really interesting situation, a cool, unique Primarch twin thing to kind of kick off Primarch purpose. So that's the 20th Legion. Up next, of course, is the 19th Legion, and we're looking at the Raven Guard Legion with their Primarch Corvus Corax specifically. Remember, just like I did here, utilizing the Legion's capabilities, specialties, and certain things helps us know about the Primarchs as well, because they are just, the product of the genome structure of their Primarchs, right? So they embody the kind of the soul and the essence of what they're about, and it helps us identify these Primarchs. So up next will be the Raven Guard, which have probably something you think similar to this, but actually kind of quite different, for sure. So that should be fun to discuss. Thanks very much for sticking through this. I know they go kind of long. I'm not going to limit myself in time for these guys because I think they deserve that type of attention. So thanks very much. Share your thoughts on Alpharius Omegon. And until next time, take it easy.